Welcome to Culmination. Well, we're not experts, but we sure have a lot to say. In the process of becoming our best self, I have with me the front ensemble section leader, Kasey Lowe, to discuss leadership. And with that, let's get started. So, Kasey, would you mind defining leadership?
Yeah, so to me, leadership is taking responsibility for a group. And that's totally different from being in charge of a group. It means like you're the one responsible for the success or the failure of a group. So I think as a leader, your job is to make it easier for other people to do their job and for your group to reach their goal.
Okay.
Obviously, that looks completely different in different contexts, but in general, I think leadership is you understand like the individual members of your groups, you understand their strengths, their weaknesses, how they work together. You want to motivate the people in your group, so you have to make people actually want to be there.
Yeah.
And really you're doing the jobs that might be the hardest, or it might be just things that other people don't want to do. You have to be willing to take one for the team.
Yeah.
It's in general just doing what's best for the group, even if it's not the best for you.
Okay. So very like selfless and everything.
Yeah, I mean, in general, yeah, not in all cases, because you also do need to know like when we have to make an executive decision, when people's feelings are going to get hurt, because it's not always like a perfect world, but
Right.
in general, yeah, you do want to be pretty selfless, always thinking about what's the best for the group.
Right. Yeah. So almost immediately, you intrigued me by your word choices. Like you said, you made the distinction how it's not exactly taking charge or taking control. Would you mind explaining that a little bit?
I think like a lot of people, when you think of a leader, you think of someone who's like telling people what to do, giving orders, like someone who's always completely in control. And in some cases, that is what you need. You need someone who's willing to like make tough decisions, who's willing to do what needs to be done. But a lot of times, you need to be willing to like listen to other people's ideas, understand that like you may not have the best perspective on something. So it's
Yeah.
important to have like a good balance, I guess. So sometimes you are taking charge, but other times it's you let other people do what they do best. I think it's
Yeah.
more of a like understanding the people in your group and knowing what your group needs for a different situation.
Yeah. And that makes me think, do you think there's different types of leaders?
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, I'm the front ensemble section leader, which is not a huge title. There's like 11 of us, 12 of us on an average year. And then you got like what, President of the United States. Those are definitely both leadership roles,
Hey,
right?
you're on your way.
Yeah, maybe someday.
Gotta start somewhere.
Yeah, we'll get there eventually. But
Yeah.
I mean, so in my situation, I'm in a group of 12. I know all the people that I'm leading personally. We're all like good buddies, you know?
hmm
Um, if you're Joe Biden, it's a totally different ballgame, right? And it's obviously a lot higher stakes too. So I think the situation
Yeah, maybe a
really,
little bit.
just a little. I think the situation really impacts like what type of leadership you are, what type of leader you are, I guess.
hmm
And then that impacts like your leadership strategies, I guess, what you have to do.
So, what about yourself? So, you're the leader. What strategies, what situations, conflicts, problems do you have to deal with? And how do you
Yeah.
deal with it?
So I personally am a pretty introverted person, so I'm a big fan of leading by example, which I think that works well for me because, like I said, it's a small group. There's like 12 of us. So because everyone sees me on like 3 times a week at least, I guess I just always act the way that I would want other people in the section to act. So show up
Okay.
at rehearsal early, like be productive, use good technique, don't talk in between reps. And other people notice that. They look, oh, hey, here's the most experienced member in the section. Here's, I guess, the person who's been designated as the section leader, although I think that's less important. And here's what they're doing. So maybe I should try doing this too, and hopefully I'll be good. That's what I think's going on in their heads. I can't claim to know that.
Yeah. So it's like instead of commanding or directing with,
Mhm.
verbally, it's just
Yeah.
I'm going to do this anyway and see if it catches on.
Yeah, I think that's a lot more effective in my case at least, because
Mhm.
if I tell everyone, "Hey, show up at rehearsal 15 minutes early," and then I'm not there when they get there, they're like, "Wait a minute, something's not adding up here." But
Right.
if I'm always there 15 minutes early, even if I don't explicitly tell people that, they just start noticing that, and then they'll be like, "Oh, hey, I think maybe I should do this too, considering the more experienced members of the section are doing it." And then they start doing it.
Right. There's a certain level of hypocrisy that you don't want to fall into.
Yeah, yeah. And
But yeah.
I think there's like an expression or a saying somewhere that like a leader should never ask their like group to do anything that they themselves are not willing to do. Have you heard that before?
It sounds like a noble thing that I've
Yeah.
heard before.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of that expression. I think because if you're not willing to do something, why would other people think that they should do it, right?
Right. It's like usually when you're a leader, you're there because of experience, or especially in our case, because I was the section leader prior. Um, you worked your way up essentially. It's not like, oh, I'm the leader, I'm self-proclaimed. Um, and with that, you understand how it feels to essentially be the grunt or like one
Mhm.
of the one of the generic members. You know how it feels. You know
Yeah.
how it is to be commanded by a section leader and how it is to be some of the other instruments and not in the center and not have the responsibility. You certainly have a more free experience because you can get away with more.
Mm.
Um, you start from that lower place and you know exactly how it feels, but I guess sometimes when you become a leader, it's like, yes, I finally made it. I earned it. Now I'm the leader. Now I'm the top dog. And people who fall into hypocrisy and don't want to do things for themselves, they could be classified as a bad leader in that regard. They
Mhm.
just forget about their experiences that they went through themselves just because it's like, well, I'm not a grunt anymore. Now I can now I can let these people act as my slaves or something
Yeah,
like
I
that.
think that's definitely like a trap you can fall into as a leader where you're like, especially in the case where it's like you work your way up through the ranks, you're like, "Oh, well, now I've earned the privilege of telling people what to do." And I
Right.
don't think leadership is a privilege, it's a responsibility.
Yeah.
You because, I mean, if you're doing that, then you don't really deserve to be the leader anymore, so it's like yeah, I don't if that makes sense?
Yeah, well, to kind of be devil's advocate, what if you do the right things, but you're also frankly kind of an ass?
Well, I mean, how can those 2 work together? I mean
Like, you're rude and you boss people around, but you manage to take responsibility and still, like, lead enough. Like,
okay, yeah, I can kinda
here's
see that.
here's an example specifically. It's like you're really good at helping people with the music, so we get really good ability-wise, but outside of the rehearsals, when you're doing maintenance things, like moving the instruments and everything, you're a lot lazier or maybe rude.
Okay, yeah, I can see how that would happen. I
Yeah,
think
it's a gray area.
mhm, but I think part of, like, your job as leaders, you gotta make people, like, actually enjoy the time that they spend there. Because
Mhm.
if if no one likes hanging out with you or no one likes in our case, no one likes being in the marching band, then no one's gonna be there next year. You're gonna be the leader of, like, yourself and no one else. So I
Right,
guess I feel like in that case, if you're a bad leader, it kind of ends up it's your loss in the end.
right. Yeah, that's a good point. It's almost like as a leader, you're a quote unquote parent, or I guess guardian's a better word. And your members are the people you have to protect. And like a parent would, you want everything to go well for your members. You want them to show up to rehearsal, have good etiquette, play better, learn more, just become more experienced, have a good time. Like, you just want that for them, at least in a good leader's case.
Yeah, I would compare it to being like a mentor, which is really similar to a parent, because I'm also like a peer mentor to individual students.
Oh,
And I
yeah.
think it's a really similar experience because it's you always want the best for the members of your group or your mentee. And it's like their success is your success, their failure is your failure.
Right.
Especially if you're in a leadership role, because you're also a part of that group. So the group success literally is your success.
How has that mentoring prepared you or helped you for your section leading?
I think it is
Or vice versa?
in some ways they are really similar. It's a lot about getting to know the people, like understanding what they need to succeed. But in some ways it is kind of different because there's not really that group dynamic, which I think is really important in any group, obviously. But yeah, I think mentoring helps me understand like how you can get to know one individual person, like I know I've said this a million times already, but like what they need to succeed. So is it like just comfort, reassurance, or is it like some action steps to get better at something?
Yeah.
And that same kind of thought process applies to when you're a leader of a group. Like, what do we need? Do we need to work together better, or do I need to just like tell these people, hey, you got to do this or else this is not going to work out, you know?
Yeah. And that's a really good point too. Just the idea of a connection.
Mm-hmm.
In that, like, I want to say intimate sense, but to define what I mean by intimate is just like not your bland one note connection of like, hey buddy, welcome to the section, we're friends. But,
Convincing.
we're just kind of buddy, but like an actual genuine connection, like I care about you and I'm here to help you. And you form a connection, you form a relationship, a friendship. You know what I mean?
I think it's a lot about understanding like people as a whole, like not just one aspect of them, because like a lot of times there are people who I'll meet who it's like there's some parts of them that are like they're great, like they have an awesome work ethic or something, or they're just really nice people to hang around and they make everyone like have a better time.
Yeah.
And then those same people will have other aspects that are like, I can see how it's like not good for the group. And you have to learn how to work with both sides of that person.
Right. Just and like then, go ahead.
Oh no. Well, you also have to understand not just how you work with people, but how they work with other people in your section, right?
Yeah.
So you gotta know like maybe like who's a good person to teach people stuff, who has like a good understanding of what will help people get better, versus like who's a good person to like just have a good time at like a party or something. If we have a section dinner, who's gonna be like leading the conversation, stuff like that.
Yeah, I definitely understand that, how it's like as a leader you can kind of, not only are you forming connections, but you can understand every individual member and see how they connect with everybody else. And that's how you truly form a sense of unity. And you're playing with their strengths. It's like, oh, this guy, I'm going to use our friend AJ as an example, who's the perfect candidate because I had him on this show to talk about positive attitudes.
Yeah, that's exactly who I was thinking of when who's a good person, like a fun person to hang around.
Yeah, exactly. So he was in our section as you were there too. And he was just a very positive person all the time. He would really groove with the music. And he was just, he was just respectful and nice in general. So it was really great to have him there because at certain moments I remember during our season together, we were all tired one rehearsal, and like we were basically dead. Like, oh
Sounds
God,
familiar.
I can't think anymore. I can't do anything anymore. And meanwhile, our tech or the teacher working with us is like, all right, play these same scales over and over again. We're just not having a good time. But then I remember having the idea of saying, hey, AJ, and then the other synth crew as they played piano, and there was a bass guitarist. And we asked them to be the hype men. They basically stood in front of us and like clapped their hands and cheered like, what?
Yeah, I
And just
remember.
be obnoxious but in a positive way while we did these scales. And I just noticed the boost in morale just in myself and with everyone else, as it was like yeah, this is a good time, this is funny, it's weird, it's wacky, and it forces you to smile.
Yeah. You gotta love those 9-hour band camp days, right?
Yeah, I mean that
But
was
yeah,
just a
like,
regular rehearsal, but
oh man, it's been a really rough day then. But like,
yeah,
knowing that, like knowing, oh, I know for a fact that AJ can cheer us up, like, that's what helps. That's what helps you better, like, make your group motivated. They actually want to be there after that.
right.
So that's an example of like how understanding the people in your group can make you a better leader.
Mm-hmm. And they rub off on you too. It's like, oh, he's super positive. Maybe I should be more positive, especially as a leader, because if I can bring everyone together and form our own jokes and routines to get better, like if we can just raise the morale of this group, we can not only succeed in our competitions and our ambitions, but just have a great time doing it in general.
Mm-hmm. You can just steal the best traits from all the people that you meet.
Right. And it actually curtails some of the weaknesses that everyone has too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's another thing, knowing that, like, okay, we know AJ's a really positive person, and right now our group is struggling with morale. We need something to just make this more fun. So knowing how, like, one person's strength can offset like a weakness of one specific person, or like a weakness that the group as a whole is going through.
Yeah. It's just very, very nice in that regard.
Mm-hmm.
So, next question I want to ask you, what does it take to be a leader? Like, obviously, we know that sometimes you can just be put in a position like, hey, you're the only junior. There you go.
Yeah.
But like, just because you're made to be a leader, like you're told, all right, you're the section leader, or you're the leader of this branch of a company, or any sort of leadership position to kind of branch off from our little bubble.
Mm-hmm.
What does it take to truly live up to that role that we described? Because we discussed leadership in sort of a high regard, very noble, honorable role. But what does it take to get there?
So I think the biggest thing is probably experience. And so when I say experience, we talked about how there's different kinds of roles. So especially in a similar role or with similar people, so you can use like knowledge that you gained from past roles in whatever your current position is. But obviously a lot of times you can't just like get experience. So if you're in like a new leadership role and you have no idea what to do, I'd say that another important thing is confidence. So you want, even if you have no idea what you're doing, you want to look like you know what you're doing. So just fake it till you make it. Because like we talked about with leading, for example, if people see that you're confident, you look like you're in control most of the time, they're going to look up to you. And then that's when they'll start to respect you. They'll like listen to you, I guess.
Yeah.
So I think confidence is important. I think empathy is important. We talked about this too, how the way the front ensemble section leader position works out, it's you go up through the ranks. So once you're the section leader, you know what it's like to be new to the group or just like a normal member.
Yeah.
And I think understanding how other people feel also helps you out a lot, because then like, what can I do to make it better for them? If
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Yeah, and you can read the room.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So confidence, empathy. I think you want to be a little organized, and I know that's kind of general. Not like you need to have all your papers in your filing cabinets or something, but like you need to know what the group's goal is, and you
Yeah.
need to have like some action steps to get there.
Yep. Just like a
So I think,
general direction.
yeah, because if your job is to help the group reach its goal and you don't even know where you're going, like, it's kind of hard to succeed then.
Right.
So I,
Yeah. What were
no,
you
go
saying?
ahead. Go ahead. That's pretty
Okay.
much all I have.
All right. I wanted to take it a little step further when it comes to confidence, because in my head, like as I'm listening to you, it's like I 100% agree, but I'm trying to think of myself like if I was listening to you say that and I'm just a regular listener to this show, this episode, and I'm hearing you say that, I'm afraid that it's like, like, yeah, confidence. I need that, but I'm not confident at all.
Sure would be nice, right?
Right. But I think the way we can truly understand that further, and let me just say, like, I think what you said is very great. That was a really good thing to say. Um, and it's just confidence is so complicated because it's like, yeah, confidence. How do I
Yeah.
get that? But I
And that's
think
not something that you can just like choose to do.
right. So I think the way to become confident is just kind of like what you were saying at the end there, like with organization. It's like, here's my plan, here's my direction. This is, but in a sense, it's like, this is the leader that I want to be. This is where I want the group to go. And I have a reputation that I set up for myself. And I want to try to live up to it. And as you think of yourself less about what you are presently, which is probably someone who's inexperienced, unorganized, unempathetic,
Mhm.
like basically none of the traits, just because you haven't had the experience yet. If you view yourself as, all right, this is what I want to become versus what I am currently, you will do everything you can to try to live up to that. And you will take the steps necessary. Like, really, by any means necessary, can I live up to this reputation that I want to become? And as you do that, I think you'll just over time gain confidence, gain some sort of competence about what you're doing, and understand your ambitions a bit more clear. And when you have that clear sense of direction, you're less uncertain, which is, the adversary to confidence. Confidence is very, very certain, less divisive.
Mhm.
You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah. That's
Or
a
less
great way to
indecisive.
think about it, I think, because yeah, you definitely can't just like say, "Oh, well, I'm a leader now. That means I got to be confident," and then just flip the switch on. It's I think it like what you said about trying to figure out how you want to improve yourself to be the best leader you can be and what can you do to improve yourself, because then the other people will also see that. They'll see you becoming better, whether it's better at a specific skill or just a better person, and then they think, "Oh, well, I can do that too," and then that's how your whole group gets better as a whole. But I
Right.
also think sometimes, like, when you're just first starting out, before you have all that, like, personal growth stuff, if you're new to a leadership role, I think you've gotta be able to, like, at the very least, like, having that sense of direction will help you out a lot. You have to appear like you somewhat know what you're doing,
Mhm.
kind of, because if on my first day I walked into the front ensemble and I was like, "Hey guys, I don't know how to hold these sticks. I don't know like what we're doing tomorrow."
Ugh.
I don't think people would trust me very much as a leader.
Yeah. It's like, look at this guy.
Yeah, like
He doesn't know what he's doing.
yeah. So I think like being able to like put on a front, fake it till you make it, that you need to do that a little bit, at least at first. But then yeah, what you said about like knowing what direction you want to improve in and just like taking the steps to become better at that,
Yeah.
that's really important, I think.
I feel like there's two ways you could go about faking it till you make it. You can either be like, all right, I either don't have the ability to play this right now, or I need to actually sit down and read this music before I can do this. But right now I have to play. I'm going to fake it till I make it, but know that after I struggle with this trying to fake it, I'm going to go back later, use it as like an incentive to get better. So if you have
Mhm.
that feeling or desire to get better from faking it till you make it, then it's actually a really good tactic. But you can also use it as just a way of getting out of things or making it convenient. Like, I remember band class last year where I was just really not having a good time. And I'm talking about concert band. So, like the class that you sign up
Yeah.
for in school versus marching band, which is extracurricular. So I was just not having a good time. So I would fake it till I made it, not with the hopes of getting better, but just so it's like, all right, I don't want to look at this later. I don't want to spend time on this, but I need to just survive.
Yeah,
So you
fake it
see
till
how
you
that's
make
not
it.
constructive?
Yeah, it's definitely not like a permanent solution.
Yeah.
Um, Going back to what you said earlier about like when you know that you can't do something, I think sometimes as a leader, you can also just like admit, like, I can't do this right now. This is something that I'm working on. I promise I will be better at it.
Yeah.
But right now, it's something that I just cannot do. And I think that that's something that will make people respect you more than if you just try it and obviously cannot.
Right.
And it kind of like humanizes you too. Because if you're, as a leader, you want those close relationships with people. You don't want to be like an ice sculpture. You want
Ice
people to
sculpture.
understand. I don't know. That's the first metaphor that came to mind.
Well,
But
an
like,
ice sculpture is a really interesting metaphor because it's like, because it's like art, and art is very interpretive. So it's like, oh, wow,
well,
look at this ice sculpture.
I'm gonna
It
be
really
honest.
captures the
I
grand
was
nature.
I was not thinking that deeply about it. I just thought
Well, I was.
people always describe people as cold. Ice is cold. Boom. There we go.
Oh, I took it in a more interpretive
Yeah, your way
direction.
is better. Let's go with that. I 100% was thinking that the whole time.
But I see what you mean. It's like you want to have a heart. You don't want to be like the distant like business CEO that nobody knows about, nobody talks to. He always holds secret meetings, and it's like you want to be the guy that can, like the head of the company who can walk up to one of the, low level people, like just normal people that work for you, and just be like, "Hey man, like how are you doing?"
You want a first name basis with people.
Right. Like you want to actually give them a chance, like treat them like people, like because you're
Hmm.
equals. It's
Yeah.
status doesn't make you above somebody in terms of your worth.
Yeah,
It's just
absolutely
a
not.
role.
Hmm.
Do you have anything to say on that?
No, I completely agree with you that, like, as a leader, you have to keep in mind that you're not above anyone else. You're just another member of the group, right?
Yeah.
So, and yeah, you want to be approachable, I guess is a good word for it.
Yeah.
Because if you're not, people are gonna come to you with like problems and stuff. They're just gonna like talk about you behind your back. You want
Mhm.
to be like friendly. I think approachable is a good word for it.
Well, then it's also interesting because then you can consider, like Machiavelli and his principles of it's better to be feared than loved. Because,
Yeah.
you know, if you're the big scary boss man, people are going to do their work because they don't want to face the consequences.
Yeah. I
Do you
think
think that's efficient?
I mean, I think it depends, because I think Machiavelli was not the Sycamore Front Ensemble section leader. Machiavelli was talking about, like, leading a nation, which, in that
But
case, I
wouldn't the
can
same things apply?
um, I mean, in some ways, but I think if you're leading, like, a nation, there's no way for you to, like, form a close personal relationship with every single citizen, right? That's just not possible. But I still
Mhm.
don't agree that it's better to be feared than loved, I don't think, because I think if you're feared, then people are just gonna turn on you the first chance they get, right?
Yeah, and that's a
You
fair
want
point.
Mhm. I think you want people to, like, trust you, respect you. You want people to want you to be the leader, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. I mean, I guess fear is also interesting because it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be an asshole.
Mhm.
Like, you can be the most noble guy, you can be super respectful, but maybe you're just not approachable, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I can see that, I think.
Like, you're scary, eh, basically, you're just very assertive. You get the point across, you're very blunt.
Mhm.
You're very not approachable, but you're, like, the nicest guy, you're understanding, you do what's best for the group. Like, you have all these other traits, but, you know, and that fear is just like, "Oh, don't cross me because there will be consequences, and I'm going to be very direct and blunt with you. But at
Yeah.
the same time, I'm not gonna be a tyrant," you know?
I think in that case, like, your style of leadership could depend on what you think your own strengths are.
Yeah.
So, like, for me, I'm a very non-confrontational person. I do not like conflict. I'm pretty introverted, like I said. So,
Yeah.
like, going the route of, like, "Don't mess with me or you'll regret it," I just know that that would not work out well for me. But if
Right.
you're someone like that, that might be better. If you're not, like, a naturally friendly and approachable person, that might be more effective. So I guess it all depends on, like, the individual.
Right, and I just remembered the example of Teddy Roosevelt, who, you know, he was a very noble guy,
Mhm.
respectable guy, and his quote is, "Speak softly and carry a big stick," you know?
Yeah, I
Like,
didn't even think
be
of that.
quiet, don't start conflicts, don't cause hell for no reason. But but if
Yeah.
you come near me, I've got this giant club that I'm about to beat you with.
You don't start fights, but you can end them.
Right. Exactly. So I guess that's a positive way to view the, Machiavellian mindset, I guess.
Yeah, we'll give him the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
Maybe he's just a certain type of person, and that's what
It's just
works for him.
misunderstood is all. Do you think anyone can become a leader? Like, every single person, 7.1 billion people are capable of being leaders?
Well, I haven't met all 7.1 billion people yet, but I think that everyone can
Fair enough.
become some type of leader. So maybe not everyone can become president of the United States, or not everyone's going to be Machiavelli. But I think everyone can take on some kind of leadership responsibility, right? And like
Okay.
we are
Would
just
you mind
talking,
elaborating?
sure, I think, well, so when we think of like a leader, we tend to think of someone with like a fancy title, like the CEO or like, I don't know, section leader. But I think a leader is really anyone who's taking responsibility for a group, right? So, like, some examples I like are like when you get put in a group for a group project, there's someone becomes like the unofficial leader, right? Normally, whoever talks first, whoever says, "Hey, let's make a group chat."
Right.
So, it's not like you don't get a nice title with that, but you're a leader. And I think that's something that pretty much any people can do if they really want to. You just have to take initiative.
Yeah. And everybody in that group has their own roles. And in a sense, maybe everybody, like by that definition, everybody in that group is a type of leader. Like maybe this guy is the leader of, like if it's a group of 4, one guy's the leader who gets everyone together. He's like the main guy who gets everybody to work and cooperate. Then you have the guy who's in charge of the artwork. Like you're making a poster board for history class, for an example. Like maybe it's about the Civil War or something, because I remember doing that in my A-Push class, which is AP US history. But so it's like one guy's in charge of the artwork and that's all he does. And then you have the guy who's in charge of getting the information that we're about to write down. So in a sense, it's like, well, they're not exactly leaders because there's one guy telling them what roles they have and they're just kind of using their strengths rather than like leading this. But you could also say they're leading their department.
Yeah, I mean, in this case, their department doesn't have any other people in it. But yeah, I get your point.
Yes.
I think it depends on, like, how do you define a leader? Because I definitely agree with your idea that, like, there's just saying that one person is the leader in a group isn't always accurate, right? People can be the leaders of different things. You can have multiple leaders in a group.
Yeah. One of the things that comes to mind is just like humility and the idea that it's like a true leader. This kind of ties back to what we were talking about earlier, how we defined a leader as someone who's less commanding, but more of somebody who's listening, which is a really weird paradox if you think about it. It's like, wait a minute, I thought a leader was supposed to take charge and keep everyone in line. So why is he listening and forming connections with people? Why is he like stepping down in a sense, being one of the same, like a citizen like the rest, a citizen king, if you will? Like what's going on here? And it makes me think back to, you could probably tie this back to ancient Greek philosophers. I bet probably
I don't know if I want to do that.
Or like Socrates probably had ideas in the sense of like, I know nothing, so I need to learn from people. But also I just remember a teacher of mine this year he said to me, like, I view, it's like when I'm teaching, yes, I'm delivering information to students and I'm the leader in that sense, but I learned so much about the students and I learn from them. So in a sense, they're kind of leaders if you think about it. They're leading his own education.
Yeah, we might have to expand our definition a little bit, because I can totally see how that example works. And actually, I think like just an average high school class is a really interesting example to look at, because you've got your teacher who's the obvious leader in the room, right? Your teacher's in charge of making sure your class learns the material, like does well on the exam. So you can see the class's success and failure as their responsibility.
Yeah.
But then also in a class, you've normally got like 1 or 2 people who are like really outgoing, answer all the questions. Like, the kind of person that I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Like the center of attention kind of?
Yeah, or like the teacher's pet, or just the overall like nerd.
Yeah. And in a way, like, they're the leader too, because they're the kind of person that the students are looking up to, because they relate to them a lot more than they relate to the teacher, right?
Right.
So they got some power over the class there.
Yeah.
I mean, and it depends on the situation, because if your class is doing like a poster project, like you just said, suddenly whoever's really good at art in the class is like the new role model, right?
Right. And a role model is somebody you look up to, or somebody who shows an example.
Yeah. The way I see it, like, if you're a role model, that kind of makes you a leader by default, because it's like leading by example. If people look up to you, they are like, okay, how can I get on that level? And then they kind of imitate your behavior. So you're kind of influencing everyone else in the class, if that makes sense.
And this discussion is just in a really interesting direction that I wasn't expecting. because, you know, we started with, all right, a leader is this guy who does this, and he's a great leader, or he or she or whatever is a great leader. But now we've just expanded it so far that it's like, wait, I guess everybody's a leader. So now I want to consider this, though, because one of the main ideas that I'm thinking of when discussing this, and I actually have a video planned for this topic in specific, so I'm not going to dive too deeply into it.
Spoilers.
But it's just the idea of power and the power dynamics between really every situation. Because in reality, in every situation, there's two groups of people, two camps: the followers and the leaders. The leaders are your role models, your people who are essentially innovators. They're ahead of the game, and they've figured something out that none of the others have really done. You know? Like the fashionista, the popular kid, they figured out how to look good. So everyone's like, wow, like,
just
someone
who has a trait that other people are like, man, I wish I could do that.
Yeah, exactly. And the followers usually just, you know, they're the ones who are imitating it or learning from it. And, you know, like a follower could be a leader in a certain situation, or they could be a follower. It's not like they're always one of them in every situation.
I guess the question that brings up is, do you have to be like consciously trying to be a leader to do it? Or can you just unknowingly become a leader? And I'm not sure what I think the answer to that is yet.
Yeah, me neither. It's definitely a gray area. But it's just interesting how power is really everywhere. Like, think about the classroom. It's like, yes, the teacher's the leader. They're in charge. But what about a class where the students frankly don't respect the teacher and the teacher isn't able to discipline the kids? Or what about like classrooms where you have somebody who knows all the answers and basically is the teacher's pet? Like, it's just always different.
Yeah. I mean, I guess obviously power and leadership are pretty tied together. And we've just been talking about, again, I'm going to say it again, that how much it depends on the situation and all the people who are involved. So I guess that, yeah, if you're going to do a future episode about like power dynamics, that would definitely tie in a lot to this one.
Right. Just the idea of, you know, like some people can use power, or in a sense, status or authority, whether it's given to them by roles or just, you know, a following, like enough people who follow them or support them. It's like, do you use this wisely? Do you use this for the group of everybody? You know, it's also just interesting in general how all of the mindsets are very different when it comes to
like
that.
what makes us respect people.
Or just your intentions. It's like, when you have power, it's like, that's a great, I know you ruled out the word privilege, but like, in a sense, you could think of it like that, or you could think of it like a responsibility. That's exactly what I'm saying. It's like, this is the way you view it, and the way you view it determines whether you're tyrannical or a citizen king.
Yep. And on the flip side, it's all the people who choose to look up to that person too, because without all of those people, that person, they lose all their power, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of the interactions between the two groups, the followers and the leaders. That's what determines, like, one, how does the group act? Does the leader stay in power?
Right.
And do the, quote, followers still continue to respect them?
That's a great point. It's almost like a yin and yang in a sense. Like, you can't have one without the other.
Yeah.
If you just have followers, then you just have a bunch of people with no direction, no example to follow. But if you don't have followers, then what really is a leader?
Got a bunch of people fighting over nothing.
I guess so.
I will say, I don't know that having power is necessarily the same thing as being a leader, because
Oh
a
yeah.
lot of the examples that we brought up, like, I'm gonna take your example of, like, the fashionista, because I like that one. I think just because people, like, are like, "Man, I wish I could do that. I wish I was as cool as them." That doesn't
Smoking hot.
mean yeah. That doesn't mean that you're really a leader of those people, because I think there's a lot of stuff that you could do that they'd be like, "Oh, never mind. I don't like
Yeah.
that person anymore." And you do have some influence over them, but one, you're not that's not really like a unified group, I
Mhm.
would say. You don't really have a goal as a team. So, I don't know that that makes you a leader automatically, because 'cause you're not really, like, working towards
That's a
anything.
good point. It's more like leadership qualities or just a following.
Mhm.
And when it comes to the power dynamic, I mean, it's a dynamic and that power is everywhere. It's always present. And when it comes to interpersonal situations, just between humans. But power, I'm not referring to power in the sense of authority, if that makes sense.
Because I think
Like,
it's an important distinction to make.
yeah, the fashionista has power over people because it's influence. And, like power in the sense of they have influential opinions, especially
Mhm.
about fashion, and people support that. But there's no true authority. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that makes sense. Because
It's not like I'm in a role to govern these people to wear these clothes, to wear Calvin Klein
mhm,
over Vineyard
I
Vine.
I command you.
I mean,
Yeah,
maybe
that'd be a
they tried, but
I think if you try to do that, that's when you lose people's respect.
well, I mean, it depends, but really it's just influence rather than I actually have the authority to force you to wear this.
Mhm. Yeah, I totally see what you're saying, and I agree 100%.
Yeah, it's not like if you were the dean of the school, you could make it a dress code,
You could.
but you're just like a student like the rest of them.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
I guess since I guess this is like a good time to start wrapping up here. So, what do you think is the big takeaway of this episode?
So I think that for to be a leader, what we've decided is really what you have to do depends on the context, depends on the people in the group, depends on what your goal is. But the most important thing is to understand your group. So, understand strengths and weaknesses. We talked about how that helps you succeed a lot.
Yeah.
Understand who you want to be, who your ideal version of yourself as a leader is, I guess, and what you have to do to get there. And then understand the full group's goal and like the action steps that you need in order to reach it. And then you have to be able to like know what you need to do to achieve all of those. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Just that direction and execution and mindset.
Hmm. Yeah.
And with that
And
said, before we really close this off, I wanted to just kind of say this directly to you because I figured this would be a good time. But since I was the section leader in my junior year and now I'm a senior, um, unfortunately, I quit band altogether. So I joined choir this year. So I I was a one-term leader, I guess you could say, because I didn't do drumline either. So I just had one season. Um, but I just felt like we made a lot of progress towards unity, and we just had a very closely knit group. And honestly, I just wanted to tell you, I visited Drumline pretty recently, like what, a month ago or so, and I saw how the pit as in the front ensemble, and honestly, it means a lot to me seeing how much work you've done for the group.
thank you. That that means a lot to me because, I mean, you're someone that I look up to, respect a lot, because when you were the section leader, I was just, another normal guy in the group. So,
Well,
it,
you were an important member, and
yeah, section leader in training.
right. How many seasons have you done? Winter Drumline and marching band?
Uh, 6 total, because just
No, I
with
mean
the,
as leader.
oh, uh, 3, because I
3.
started my sophomore year,
Yeah,
and then,
which is also very impressive because usually it's a junior role.
yeah, well, that's one of those situations where they just kind of throw the leadership role at you. They're like, hey, you got the most experience. This is your job now. Good luck.
Right, and unfortunately, because I dipped, essentially, I,
No,
I threw that on you, but seriously, you did a really good job. Everybody seemed to have a good time being there. It just seemed like the community that it was when I left it, so
yeah,
that's
thank
awesome,
you.
and I mean that.
Thanks,
Although
and
I bet the directors aren't gonna want another, leader named Kasey because aren't you dipping too?
yeah, well, they'll probably put Maya in, I think, and
Yeah, probably. Yeah, so you're not doing band next year, right?
I'm not planning on it right now.
Do you wanna just explain why before we end this? Because that's kind of
Yeah, well,
ironic to this whole
this
video.
is how I end my career is making a podcast about leadership.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, it's after a while, the time commitment, because if you do marching band, that's a pretty huge time commitment. That's like, what, 10 hours a week on a
Yeah.
normal school week, plus all the summer camps and stuff. I
Yeah.
think I just was not getting as much from the activity as I was before, because I think the first couple of years you just have a great time with all your friends. You're like a new freshman. You don't really know what's going on all the time, but boy is it fun. And then as you go up through the ranks, when you are put in that leadership role, you start to learn like, okay, here's what I can do to help our group work together as well as possible. And so that's maybe not as fun, maybe a little more stressful, but
Yeah.
you learn a lot from that. And I think now I'm on my last year and like I kind of want to do it just to finish it out, get the all 8 seasons, but I feel like I don't think I have too much left to learn from the activity.
Yeah,
It's more just stressful at this point.
right.
So it's like I could spend my time better elsewhere, I guess.
That's exactly how I felt too. Like,
Mhm.
I'm in senior year, and I only had 1 season of being a leader, and I didn't do Winter Drumline as much as you did. I did 2 seasons of that, though, so a combined total of 5 seasons total. Um, but, it's like it was a great learning experience, but
Mhm.
towards the end of my band experience, just in general, I really felt stuck in the sense that it's like, you know what? Like, this isn't exactly worth it to me anymore. Like, I
Yeah.
loved it. There were things that were absolutely priceless and people that I met that I love here, but I just have to, I have to embark on a new journey.
Yeah. It's like, okay, it's kind of draining too. And I think it's like at this point I realize I don't have like the enthusiasm for band anymore. I don't have
Mhm.
the dedication and I just don't have enough time to commit to it. So I
Right.
guess we can add that to the leadership checklist. Part of being a leader is knowing when you're not the most qualified person for the job anymore, right?
Right. Or like when it's time to throw in the towel.
Yeah, let someone else take over.
Right. But also we're not done being leaders. We're just
Mhm.
taking our experiences and our skills somewhere else.
Yeah. We're done in that specific context, but the stuff we learned from that's gonna help us out in other roles.
Right. And with that said, I think that's a perfect place to stop. So
Yeah.
thanks for joining me for the 20th episode of Culmination. Woo! But yeah,
Yeah, thanks for having me.
yeah,
That was a good conversation.
yeah, I agree. It's always a pleasure. And with that said, I present to you all an interview section of this video in celebration of the 20th episode of Culmination. So I figured I'd bring on some old guests to discuss leadership and see what they think. So here we go. From the Comfort Zone episode, Govin Nadather. So, how would you define leadership?
In my opinion, leadership means you are the most passionate person as part of a team that works to help everyone reach the goals of the team. So I think the most important thing about leadership is realizing that you are also part of that team and not trying to um, be sort of this tyrannical dictator. I think that leadership involves being passionate, listening to other people's opinions, and making decisions so that the team can progress. A leader must have a lot of clarity and also be humble. I think being humble is also a really important part of being a leader. So, sort of my opinion on this is that a leader is not tyrannical. A leader is not trying to tell everyone what to do. A leader is one person that's on the team with everyone that sort of makes decisions so the team can progress.
From the extroversion episode, Sam Bates. How would you define leadership?
I think leadership is about establishing trust between yourself and the people that you are. Sorry, there was a bug. Leading. But then also, I think leadership is about staying true to your ideas and what you like, your values and what you think the group or team should be doing. But then allowing your vision for whatever you're doing. In my case, it's film and directing to I guess change or adapt depending on the people that you are leading. So like a good leader needs to I guess take ideas from and integrate the ideas of the group along with what they want to display or show, I guess. But also like staying true to the things that you think are important and you think that need to stay the same. So in my case for film, right? I have a vision for what I want to do, but there's been many times where some of my actors or crew members have said, "Hey, I don't like this. I think we should do this instead." And I hear their ideas, and I'm like, "Yeah, that's that's obviously a lot better than what I've done, so we do that instead." But then there's also times where someone says, "I don't like this," and I adjust it a little, but for the most part, I know that it's something that is integral, and so I keep it that way. So I think you need to be able to distinguish between what you are willing to part with for the sake of the whole group and what is important enough to you to just remain rigid on but still adapt it or change it in some ways, I guess depending on what your team members say. So I think to sum it all up, leadership is a lot about I guess integrating the best parts of your team but still staying true to your vision is what I would say.
From the Purpose and Conflict episode, Joseph Arietta. Could you define leadership?
Sure. It's the ability to coalesce people around a movement that you want to see further. It doesn't have to be perhaps positive, but it's an innate ability that some people just have more than others. It's an ability to group people and bring them to you and you alone, because leadership means leading them via you, right? There's no real ability to compromise with leadership. You have to lead them, or else you're not a leader, right? Leadership requires leading people, and if you can't convince people to do things, then you're not a leader. That's just how it is, right? So I would also say that, just an example from my life, I was in the Model UN club at the junior high. I started that, and I gathered around me a group of people that I led for the year that we were in that club. And Do you think that I made any compromises when I wanted to do something? No way. Why would I sacrifice the integrity of my club in order to, placate some people that don't really matter to me, right? I made sure that what my interests were came first, and that was all.
Is that all?
That's all.
Oh, okay.
I'm very authoritarian when it comes to these things.
From the motivation episode, Sakani Cole, could you define leadership?
Leadership to me is being the first one to do something and helping others along the way. Whether you fail or succeed, just being able to help people is what I feel like being a leader is. Oh, you need a longer one, don't you?
Oh, I was expecting you to go on for like a minute or so.
Oh, okay, I can do that. Yeah, sorry. Completely forgot space on that. Just like let's redo it, and then you can cut the first thing.
Okay.
All right, go ahead.
Oh no, you can just start from after the question.
Oh, okay. Leadership to me is being the first one to do something and then helping someone along the way. I don't think it really matters whether you succeed or whether you fail, but being that person to help someone just emanates wisdom, maybe a little bit of maturity, and those are traits that are commonly associated with leaders anyway. And you hear a lot of people say that leaders have to be perfect, that they have to, lead by example, but leading by example can also mean failing and not doing what they've done. It's all about how you frame uh, success in your mind. And I feel like a leader can make success anything they want it to be. And with that being said, it's just like a leader is someone who, no matter how you look at them, they always know what they're doing in some type of way.
All in all, everybody's had really great things to say, and it's been a pleasure having everybody on for 20 episodes of Culmination. I can't believe that it's already been 20 and it's been like 10 weeks or so, but I hope you all enjoy this video, and thanks for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.